So today's is called The Door is Open. You should probably close that and not let the air conditioning out. But it's about hospitality, which is great. I'm all for it. I love it when people do it to me. When I have to do it, it's a little harder than it used to be, let's be honest. Everybody's on some kind of gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar busters, no carbs, vegan, paleo diet, and you don't even know what to serve anymore. It's not easy. You gotta, basically, you're left with celery and water, and not a lot of good fellowship happens over celery and water, let's be honest. But there's a couple upsides to having people over. I get 1,000 times more housework done in that 10 minutes before people are going to hit the front door than in the 3 weeks previous, because honestly, who's going to work that hard if you think nobody's going to judge you? And I've learned that if you're going to have people over, definitely do it at night, because A, candlelight covers a multitude of dust, and B, there's a natural end to it because people have to go to bed. They have to leave because it's nighttime, right? Nobody's going to sleep over. But if you have those people in your life that have trouble knowing when to leave, if you just kind of excuse yourself and say, oh, I gotta go to bed now, they normally get the hint. There are 2 times I like to see company: coming and going.
Well, ladies, the door is open and the light is on, and today we're going to open up the Word of God and find out what He has to say about hospitality and how it relates to you. When Beloved and I first came to Christ, we were dropped in the middle of a very mature group of Christians, and they were so talented. They knew the Bible so well. Many of them were wonderful teachers. Some of them had a good bit of money and were very, very generous with their money. Others had a lot of extra time and did some incredible service for the Lord. And here we were. We didn't hardly know where Genesis was. We didn't have a lot of money, and we didn't have a lot of time. And yet we had such a heart that we wanted to, in some way, give back to the Lord because of what He had done for us. And I remember one night we were just talking about it. Well, what can we do? What do we have? And we realized that we had an extra bedroom. And so we gave our extra bedroom to the Lord and asked Him if He could use it for His glory. And that began for us practicing hospitality. And I will just tell you that if you give your extra bedroom to the Lord, I promise you He will use it more than you can ever imagine. When we come to this word hospitality, it means generous and friendly reception of guests. The generous and friendly reception and entertaining of guests. Now, the Bible word for it means the love of strangers. But as we go to the word, we're going to find out that He usually will talk about love of strangers and entertaining strangers and be hospitable to strangers, but also the care for the brethren. So it really is opening your heart, oftentimes your home, and providing comfort for others. I just think that one part of that is seeing your home as a tool that Jesus Christ can use for His glory to bring comfort to other people and to help other people and to entertain other people and to build their fellowship and love for one another. And that all can take place in the home. Now, when we come to the Word, we've got some great examples in there. I love this one. I personally see Abraham as kind of the Bill Gates of his time. He was very wealthy. And it says that he was sitting by the oaks of Mamre by his tent, the door of his tent, in the heat of the day. Well, I just see that he's a rancher and he's sitting on his front porch and it's noontime and he's just had his lunch and he's just resting because it's so hot out, and he's got these beautiful oak trees in the front yard. And he sees some strangers. And I think it's just amazing what this man does. Now, this is a very important man. And yet he jumps up and he runs to the strangers and he invites them to come into his home. He says, come and wash your feet and rest under the oak trees. Just come and refresh yourself. They agree to do it, and they come and sit on his porch. And what does he do? He goes and gets a fatted calf and has his men kill that so that he's got nice fresh steaks. And he has his wife bake some fresh bread and some curds, and he brings them a wonderful steak dinner. You see, he was practicing hospitality. He was taking the care of strangers. Mary and Martha are two women who I think also knew how to practice hospitality. We see them entertaining Jesus on more than one occasion. Now, Martha always gets the bad rap because she's in the kitchen, but the truth is when you've got company over, somebody's got to feed them. And yet Mary certainly was showing graciousness in sitting at Jesus' feet and listening to what he was saying. So the two of them together were the perfect picture of gracious, wonderful hospitality. Now, Jesus also was extremely hospitable. You remember one time he fed 4,000 people, and the next time he fed 5,000 people. That's pretty hospitable. To me, that's the idea of the perfect party. And then again, after he rose from the dead, where is he? He's on the beach, frying up fish, offering a wonderful fish fry to his disciples. You see, he was also one who showed us hospitality, even just in the way he lived. And when it comes to the Bible, it has a good bit to say about hospitality, and you might be surprised by some of the things that it says. Now, I don't want you to open your Bible. I just want you to sit and listen to this. I'm going to read a scripture to you. Then we're going to come up with a biblical principle, and then I'll give you a little bit of examples to help you kind of understand how that's played out in real life. In Romans 12, 10 through 13, it says this. It's kind of like a list of things that God wants us to bring about in our own lives. Be devoted to one another in brotherly love, and give preference to one another in honor, not lagging in diligence, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope, persevering in tribulation, devoted to prayer, contributing to the needs of the saints. And he wraps it up by saying, and practice hospitality. Now, you might think that that's just, okay, I think I had somebody over for dinner 5 years ago, so I've done that. This word actually is a habitual word. You are habitually practicing hospitality. Now, notice, ladies, this isn't a suggestion. This is God Almighty commanding us to be hospitable. My mama, really, I think she was a remarkable woman. I know so many of us think about that, our mothers that way. She was raised in the Deep South, and so in her home, there was always a maid and there was always a cook. Mama never learned how to cook at home. And then she got married, and there was a maid and a cook in her own home, so she never learned how to cook. When she was 32 years old, my father was transferred from the Deep South to a teeny tiny town up in the frozen country of Michigan, right on the shores of Lake Michigan. Now she's a long way away from any kind of sophisticated culture, and there was no help there. And so Mama had to take her Joy of Cooking cookbook, and at the age of 32, she had to teach herself how to cook. And when she did, she opened the door of her heart and the door of her home and began to have people come into our very lives as a family. I don't remember any Sunday dinner that there weren't other people sitting at that table. And sometimes they would be friends. Sometimes they'd be total strangers. Somebody just dropped into church out of nowhere, and she invites them home for dinner. I will tell you that's not the only time she entertained. Oftentimes there would be families for dinner on a Friday night or a Saturday night. There would be picnics. There would be coffees. Mama used her home to love on other people. And you know what? I think they loved being there. The reason I can say that is because they lived there 20 years. When Daddy retired, before they could even put that little house up on the market, his boss, who just a few years before had built a beautiful home on the outskirts of town, asked if they could buy our home. Sold that lovely home of theirs, moved into Mommy and Daddy's home. I've often thought, why did they do that? And I am convinced it is because they experienced love in that home and fellowship in that home and great food in that home, that it had memories that warmed their heart. And if they lived in that house, they could enjoy that on a daily basis. Now, there was the daughter of another friend who came to them after they'd only lived there 2 or 3 years and asked if she could have first refusal on that home if it ever went on the market. It never did, because when the boss and his wife passed away, their daughter moved into that house. And I think it was because of Mama and Daddy and how they always opened their home and their heart to other people. So that's a command. God says we We are to be hospitable. That's part of the Christian life. In 1 Timothy 5, it says this, "Let a widow be put on the list if she has shown hospitality to strangers, if she has washed the feet of the saints," that is an action of hospitality in those days when they wore sandals in the dust, "if she has assisted those in distress and has devoted herself to every good work." Now, this is referring to widows. This is to women. And so I think that from that verse, we can see and safely say that part of the role of a woman truly is to practice hospitality. Now, this is basically saying if a woman has done this and she is a widow, when she becomes a widow and is older, she is due honor. She is due to be taken care of by the church because she has lived a life that is so excellent and extraordinary. She has been an amazing woman. When just about a week before Beloved and I were married, a widow in our town who was quite well-to-do called and invited us to come to her home on a Sunday afternoon. She wanted to see my ring. She wanted to hear about the wedding. And we were very honored that she would have us come. So we went to her home, and we were sitting in that living room, got there about 2 o'clock. And I will tell you, ladies, she was able to ask the most wonderful questions. She was a great question asker. She wanted to know about not only the wedding and see the ring, but how did we meet? And when did we decide we were really in love? And what came about that we decided it was time to get married? And what was our plan for the future? And how did we see keeping our marriage alive and wonderful? Well, we had a wonderful time. And all of a sudden, I looked down at my watch. It was 5 o'clock. And I was embarrassed because I thought, whoa, we've really overstayed our welcome. So I said, Mrs. Corey, we have got to leave. And I really apologize for staying so long. She said, no, please stay and have dinner with me. Well, Mama had trained me that you don't overstay your welcome, but she was so insistent that we stayed. She got up and she ran into the kitchen. She was gone truly 5 minutes and came back and sat down. She said, dinner will be ready shortly. We talked some more, and she got up, went back in the kitchen, was gone 5 minutes. She came out with trays that had noodles Alfredo with shrimp in it. Now, this was in a tiny town in Ludington, Michigan. You never got shrimp. I mean, shrimp was such it was a gourmet feast for us. A slab of lettuce with a wonderful little dressing on it, a little roll on the side. And I will tell you, I thought it was an absolute feast. That was 46 years ago. I can close my eyes and be in Mrs. Corey's living room and feel the warmth and the love there and be transported back. About a year after that, I was talking to her and I said, how in the world did you get that dinner together so fast? She laughed and she said, have you ever heard of Kraft Alfredo? She said, you just boil the noodles and dump the little packet in. I opened a can of shrimp and there it was. And I thought, how cool. I could do that. I can even do that. She was prepared. She was ready that on the spur of the moment, she could provide something so wonderful for a young couple. But what was the best part was she was truly interested in us. It was a wonderful time. One more principle, and this comes out of Hebrews 13, 1 through 2. Let the love of the brethren continue, and do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for this some have actually entertained angels without knowing it. It says truly that you will be blessed. There is a possibility, literally, that you might entertain angels when you open up your home to hospitality. We were attending a church, and one day they said, we have a choir coming to town, and we need a bedroom. And of course, we had the bedroom. And so anybody can give time. Well, we raised our hand, and sure, we'd take a couple, you know. Well, it ended up, A, not being a choir, it was Jews for Jesus. And B, it wasn't 2, it was 4 people. So we kicked one of our daughters out of her bedroom and used that bedroom, and they came and stayed with us for 2 weeks. Now, why is that so interesting? We lived on a cul-de-sac. We were about the only Gentiles on the cul-de-sac, and the other families were all Jewish. This was Jews for Jesus. They pulled into our driveway in an enormous van with Jews for Jesus written all over the thing. And you know what I thought? I thought, God's answering my prayers. He has sent them to talk to my neighbors. He's going to witness to them. I've been praying for them for so long. Well, they were with us 2 weeks. They were such a blessing to our family. They never talked to the neighbors, and they drove out. About a week later, I got a call from one of those neighbors, and she said, I'd like to invite you to a Tupperware party. I said, great, I'm always up for a party. And she said, oh, and by the way, we're all very mad at you. And that's not like a really happy invitation to a Tupperware party, I'll tell you that much. And she said, we're all mad at you because really, Pat, Jews do not believe in Jesus. Oh my goodness, we were so distraught that we had offended. So, Beloved and I made 5 pies. I carved on the top pastry, we're sorry, and we started delivering pies. The first one was to the one who was sort of the leader. And I was probably the most intimidated by her. I'm standing there on her porch, Beloved's next to me with my pie. She opens the door, and Beloved says, we just want you to know we are very sorry. We would not have offended you for anything. She started to cry, and she asked us in, and we sat in her den, the pie on my lap, for an hour and talked about why Jews can believe in Jesus. She had no idea. She didn't understand what a Christian was. She didn't know that we truly believed in the Old Testament, and it opened doors for us that were incredible. And I look back on that, and ladies, I will tell you, I think those were angels. I think they were angels visiting my house. It was an answer to my prayers. I truly believe that you can entertain angels unaware. Let's go to another principle. This one is going to come out of 1 Peter 4:9. Be hospitable without complaining. Did you get that? Be hospitable without complaining or grumbling. Now, the principle is simple. Be hospitable without complaining or grumbling. That's the principle. We had a young couple come and live with us one summer. He was an intern at a church in town. They had just had a brand new baby, and they needed a place to stay. And by that time, one of our daughters had left. We had a couple of bedrooms, so we gave them those 2 bedrooms upstairs, and they moved in with their little baby. The little baby had the worst case of colic I have ever seen. It was so grievous and cried 22 hours a day. That little mama's this experience with motherhood was really traumatic for her. And truly, when you have a baby crying 22 hours a day, it kind of puts everybody just a little bit on edge. I got a call from a relative. We want to come through town. Could we stay with you a couple nights? Absolutely. Moved them into another bedroom. They moved in. Something happened to their car. They ended up staying for a couple, 3 weeks. So we had all of this going on. My house was up for sale at the same time. And I really had such a wonderful attitude for that first day or 2. And after a week, I was stressed. I was just stressed, and I was not happy. And I remember that night I was talking to Beloved, and I said, you got to get these people out of this house. I just have to get my house back to myself. And I was going on. And of course, the next day I'm having my quiet time. And of course, I come to this verse. God has this way of doing it, doesn't he? Speaking to us through his word. And I'll tell you, it pierced my heart. It pierced my heart because you know what I realized? I am blessed to have this house. I'm blessed to know people and to be able to bring them in and care for them during this time. And it changed my whole attitude. And God changed everything. Did the baby stop crying? No. But I think we were really able to minister to that couple. I think we were able to help them at a very hard time in their life. As far as the relatives, they were a tremendous blessing to us. And in the end, we sold our house. So it all worked out. But God says, if you're going to be hospitable, and you need to be, you do it with good cheer, because that's what you're here for. That's what you're here for. You're the light of the world. One more principle. Luke 14:12 through 14. And when you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or your rich neighbors, lest they also invite you in return and repayment comes to you. But when you give a reception, invite the poor and the crippled and the lame and the blind, and you will be blessed since they don't have any means to repay you. For you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. What's he saying? Don't just be hospitable to your good friends that are so easy to have around. Don't be hospitable to people who you want them to repay you. But when you do, invite those people who really are suffering. It might be that single mom who's just struggling so hard. It might be that widow who is so lonely. It might be the crippled and the lame and the poor. But open your home not only just to your friends, but also to those who cannot repay you, because you know what? The day is coming and you're going to be surprised, because you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. God has a reward for you. And I will tell you, honey, I would rather get God's reward any day than just another invitation to somebody's house for dinner. And God has promised us that there will be a reward here on earth. When we were first married, we were so poor, I'm telling you, we ate 25-cent macaroni and cheese like night after night after night. We had an elderly couple who about once a week would invite us over for dinner. And it was so interesting because when she did, we'd go and there'd be this huge feast, just huge amounts of food. And then we would finish dinner and she'd package it all up and send it home with us. She never talked about how poor we were. We never talked about how poor we were. They knew we were. She would not have ever embarrassed us. What was she doing? She was providing for us in a way that didn't humiliate us or embarrass us. She was sending all that food home so we'd have something good to eat during the week. And I look back on that and I thought, she was living this out. And we were the poor. And I was so grateful to her because, honest to Pete, we really had nothing. And so she ministered to us in the most wonderful way. All right, ladies. So those are the commands about what you're supposed to do with hospitality. Now we're going to talk about something else. I want to talk to you about all of the excuses you're going to give as to why you're not going to practice hospitality, and we're going to kind of undo them, okay? Let's take the first one, and that's pride. Pride can show itself in a couple of different ways. One of them is, well, I just don't have nice enough things. I don't really have any good china, and, the couch is kind of torn and worn, and I've got this small house, and wah, wah, wah. I taught in inner city schools, and when I taught school, the kids went home for lunch, and so often I would get invitations to go home with my little kids for lunch, which was always a kick and fun. I loved it. I would go to the poorest home where they had almost nothing, and I would eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich on a broken chipped plate, and that mama would love on me, and it was a feast. It doesn't matter what you have. All that matters is you. You are what's going to make everything so wonderful for people when they walk into your home. It's going to be your heart of kindness and generosity and that you're interested in them. It doesn't matter what you have. Now, there's another side to that. My stuff's too nice. I've got that white couch that costs $5,000, and what if the kids sat on it and got it dirty? Or my dishes are so wonderful that I wouldn't want anyone to break them. I met a woman who had 18 sets of china, complete sets of 12. And as she was telling me about this, I love dishes too. I can't afford it like she can, for sure, but I was so impressed. And I said, wow, you must love to entertain. And she says, I never entertain. She says, I don't want people to mess with my dishes. They were boxed up in her attic. Come on, ladies. Use the good things. Get all that good stuff out and use it for people, because that's the reason why God's given it to you. You've got great silver and beautiful home. Open those doors and use it mightily, and let those kids get your white couch dirty. The reason you've got that is only for a tool for God to use. Let him use it mightily for his people. So pride is one of them. Another one is just fear. I'm afraid to have people in. I don't feel comfortable with people. Beloved came home from an elders meeting one night, and a young man had come to our elder board. He had been in a lifestyle that was not healthy for him, and he thought he had AIDS. And he was scared, and he was homeless, and he was so afraid of this disease. And so he asked for help. So Beloved invited him to come home and live with us, and which he did. When he told me that, this was in the early days of AIDS, where it was thought that you could get it in a lot of different ways. And I really had to wrestle with God, because I had a family, and I liked being healthy, and I just didn't know how far I'd go for the Lord. And he very gently convinced me that God truly is my protector, and that he would take care of me, but that right now I needed to take care of someone else. Well, that young man lived with us for 1 year and then moved out for a short time and then moved back in for another year. He did not have AIDS, for which we were very grateful. And in the end, I think we were a blessing to him. And really, he was a blessing to us too. But sometimes fear can stop us. And I look back and I think I would have been so terrible if I would have missed that opportunity just because I was afraid. Sometimes we don't practice hospitality. You know why? We're lazy. Let's just lay it out there, ladies. We're just going to lay it out there and say it like it really is. We're simply lazy. I just don't want to take the time. I don't want to, give up my little fun things. And yet, truly, I think you're going to stand before the Lord someday. I believe that if you want to be lazy on any of his commandments, you're going to have to speak to him about it. That's not my issue with you. That's God's issue with you. So laziness to me is just willful disobedience. Inexperience is another one. I really don't know how to cook. And I'm not a very good housekeeper. I don't know how to set a table. I don't know how to whatever. I just think of my mom, 32 years old and didn't know how to cook. Do you know how to read? If you know how to read, there's a gazillion cookbooks, and some are for beginners and some are for those gourmet cooks. Do you know how to work a computer? Anything you want to know is on a computer. You want to know how to set a beautiful table? You want to know just how to set a table? Look online. I will tell you later. Go to the library. That's another place. Anything you want to do, anything you want to learn can be learned. No skill is just dropped on you. Everything you have had to learn through a skill. You've had to learn how to talk, you've learned how to walk, you learned how to do a million different things. It was all because you had to take the time to learn it. If you want to be hospitable and you want to be a fabulous hostess, everything is available to you. Inexperience cannot be used as an excuse. And lastly, another one that I think is really certainly probably one of the major excuses now is I'm too busy. That's a good one. I'm just too busy. With so many of the things that we've talked about, ladies, I think that can be our ongoing issue, our ongoing excuse. I'm too busy. Could I just challenge you in a couple things? First of all, I think we talked about priorities. I really do think it's a good time to look at your life and say, you know what? What is the excellent thing? Am I doing good instead of the excellent thing? And I think the things that the Lord asks us to do, those are the excellent things. So if you're overextended, it might be a good time to say, maybe I should readjust my life. Also, I think there's tons of ways to practice hospitality that don't take huge amounts of time. Put hot dogs on in the backyard and invite your neighbors over. Make a cup of tea and invite somebody to come on over. I'll tell you, one of the nicest times I've ever had with a friend was when I dropped by her house and she said, I haven't got anything in this house. And she went into the kitchen. She made me a cup of tea. She toasted toast and put butter and cinnamon sugar on it. And it was a feast. You see, it doesn't take a huge, big old deal. We've given you some recipes. We've given you some ideas in your workbook. I would encourage you, if you feel inexperienced, open the books. If you feel inexperienced, go online. Look at cookbooks. There's so much available for you. But in the end, I believe with all of my heart, hospitality is a giving of ourselves, and in turn, God gives back to us. It is a gift that we give to others that God chooses to bless us by. One time we had a call late at night from a friend who was very distraught. He had become extremely involved in pornography and was caught in a horrible trap. He was sitting in his truck with his gun in a gas station, and he was about ready to blow out his brains. Beloved went and got him and brought him home, and he lived with us for 3 months. What could we offer him? Were we counselors? No. But you know what we could offer for that time? We could offer quiet rest. We could offer good food. We could offer a listening ear. We could offer encouragement. And so while he was getting the help he needed, we could be a safe haven for him. You see, that's what hospitality is. And sometimes you will have people over for just a dinner. And sometimes God will ask you to have them move in with you for a while. But for all that it costs you, and it will cost you, ladies, it will cost you time, it'll cost you money, it'll cost you privacy, it'll cost you energy, it'll cost you all kinds of things. But in the end, I promise you that God will pour back into you in so many blessings that you will hardly be able to stand it. It will be so good. An amazing woman really does know how to open her home and open up her heart to others, to minister to them, and to make life better for them. That's what an amazing woman does.
I have always loved having people in my home, and I was fortunate to start younger than most. I had a mother that consistently had people in her home, and she trained me to do the same. As a teenager, my sister Lori and my friend Mary Lee and I put on an elaborate dinner party. We spent days and days cooking for this grand event. When Andy and I got married, we purposed to have others over for dinners. And I really can't count how many people we had in our tiny home that first year. Andy and I have now been married 15 years, and things are not the same. We have 4 children, of which 3 I homeschool, and my time is not what it used to be. I would say that my greatest struggle with showing hospitality is wanting perfection. And I am constantly fighting this battle. I know perfection is not what God wants. He does not need another Martha Stewart, just a willing servant. My husband Andy has a tendency to call me on a Friday morning, and he suggests a cookout with friends that night. There's no time to plan or to clean, not what the perfectionist in me would prefer. Recently, this perfectionist dumped an entire pan of appetizer dip into the oven right as my guests were arriving. The smoke alarm went off, and the fumes from the oven were intense. I was so mad. I was so frustrated. I almost stole my joy from the whole event with my friends. And God definitely keeps me humble. Each year I host a Valentine's tea for my 9 nieces, their mothers, their grandmothers, and my 3 daughters. However, there have been many years that circumstances are not perfect. One year I actually hosted the tea while on bed rest. I only got out of bed for tea, and everything was done by my sweet mother and my mother-in-law. This year I'm actually having it at a dear friend's house. We are in the process of renovating our home and are currently living with my parents. It's definitely not perfect, but God always works it out. Most importantly, God has taught me to focus on the people. That's what hospitality is about: encouraging one another, loving one another, and serving one another.